Friend to the blog, well said, and runner of a new Kickstarter for his band, the Fright Watch. Steve Peters asked, have you looked at the Kickstarter for Fright Watch?
I've been sharing a link. I think the last update that he said was he's halfway to his goal. I think he's only trying to raise like $2,000 or less.
Right.
And I think he said that, yeah, he's like halfway there as of today.
Good. While we're talking about Steve Peters, since he's going to be part of this, please hold for Dave Sim. Can we illustrate it with the cover to his parallel comic verse trade paperback digest? Did you see that? Have you read that one yet?
Yeah, I got that one. I backed that Kickstarter.
That was one of those, man, it took him forever to do that, but it was definitely worth the trip. I've got a couple of weekly updates coming up where I'm going to talk about it. And it does have the scripted Cerberus Conquers the Universe that I wrote, that Steve Peters paid me to do for that book. And I'm still very, very proud of that story. And I drew it for Steve Peters. I know he'll be able to knock this out of the ballpark, just the way I know how his stories go and how he draws them. So it'll have perfect tone for Steve Peters' work. And it was definitely a trip getting the digest in and going, oh, here's where it fit. And the elaborate work that he did on the other parts of that. That's the reason that Steve only does a finished piece of work every few years, but it's always worth waiting for.
I actually own the original page for the latter day page with Cerberus doing the Pretty Flowers, Pretty Sunsets, and then I also have the Melmoth page.
What did you pay for that out of those? I'm curious.
I can't remember. I think it was like $100 or $150 for on the Kickstarter, because he was doing a Kickstarter, and it was, I forget what Kickstarter it was, but if you did, or no, I take it back. The first one, it was he was doing a Kickstarter and he was short like I think $200 from his goal with a day to go, and I'm like, I had the money, I just upped my goal, and he's like, well, thanks so much. You know, what's your favorite service page? And I gave him like 4 options, and Dar Pretty Flowers was number 1. And he went, that's perfect. And I didn't know about Cerberus Conquers the Universe yet, and apparently you guys had already started the process when he did this page. And then for the next Kickstarter he was doing, I think it was for the Parallel Comic Verse, was where it was, he had different phone books listed, and that was, you could get a page with whatever page you wanted from that phone book. And it was another one where I went, I'll do Melmoth because I like Melmoth, and he's like, you know, what page would you like? I went through the phone book and pretty much said, this page has service and other people, this page has service and other people, and gave him a list of like, I think 15 or 20 options, and he responded going, well, thank you, this will be a lot easier to do now.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah, I definitely appreciate what Steve did on that, and I hope more people buy a copy of it. Watch for me on the weekly update, holding it up next to my face, which it's small enough. It's just about the same size as my face. Anyway, I wanted to ask. Go ahead.
The other neat thing about the original pages is the text is in English, and in the book he made up the alien language. So the pages in the book are the alien language. He also sent me copies of his handwritten alien language.
the cover of issue 186 and actually redrew all of the wallpaper. Like he didn't just Photoshop it from a copy of the book. And it's like, well, that's impressive. Anyway, he says, I wanted to ask about Superman as comic book messiah. I have some problems with what he's saying here, so I'm gonna interrupt at the end of each of his sentences and qualify it as much as possible. Like I say, I wanted to ask about Superman as comic book messiah. I would think that Superman was more the Mashiach, as Jews understand the Mashiach, which tends to be what you see in the book of Judges, that the pattern appeared to be that every 20 years or 40 years, God or the YHWH, or God and the YHWH, the Jewish people would get themselves into terrible troubles by being disobedient and backsliding and whatnot, and God or YHWH would send a savior protector who would bail them out and then judge Israel for 20 years, 40 years, something like that, it would specify. Superman seems particularly like Samson, who is included as one of the judges in the book of Judges, and is definitely the weirdest judge that you can imagine, particularly the Samson and Delilah plot that even people who don't know the Bible know Samson and Delilah, particularly with the fact that Samson has super strength and that he also has the Achilles heel, which was if you shave his head, shave the hair off of his head because he was a Nazarite, then that would sap him of all his strength, and he would be a completely ordinary man, which also ties in with the non-biblical but culturally significant Jewish golem, which is probably more what Siegel and Schuster were thinking about, or Jerry Siegel was thinking about when he created Superman, was the golem. I qualify that because when you ask about the Messiah, I think we've got a consensus on the Christian side and the Muslim side that Jesus was the Messiah. The description of Jesus in the Quran is definitely the Synoptic Jesus, not the Johannine Jesus. But I don't think it's right as a society to automatically disqualify, and particularly as North Americans tend to do, the idea that the Mashiach hasn't gotten here yet. It's like the Jewish people try to be very polite about that, but it's like, no, we have a pretty good idea of what it is that we're looking for. It's going to be somebody like the guy in Judges. It's going to be like Judas Maccabee, but he's not going to sign a non-aggression pact with the Romans. We'll let you know. The moment the Mashiach shows up, we'll know, and we'll let everybody else know. No, Jesus isn't the Mashiach. He's interesting. He's definitely a miracle worker. He's definitely a teacher. Blah 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 blah. But he's not the Mashiach. So the Jewish aspect of Dave Sims' religious faith bristles when it gets to saying Messiah, and the assumption being, okay, when you say Messiah, you mean Jesus. Well, not if you're Jewish. Yeah, see, in the next sentence, Steve says, though comparing Superman to Jesus is nothing new, someone brought it up recently, and I started thinking about it in ways I hadn't before. It occurred to me that he died and rose from the dead in our lifetime. And it's like, okay, we got to stop there again. It's like he didn't die in our lifetime. Newsflash, the year's 2021, and he died 2,000 years ago, which I have to qualify that as well and say he died and was resurrected. And we don't really know if he then died again, or if he just went away, or if he was taken up to heaven like Elijah in a chariot of fire. The synoptic Jesus, there's definitely, I forget which of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the ending has it of Jesus ascending into heaven. The Johannine Jesus refers to, and if you should see the Son of the Man rising up from where he was the former, what would you say at that point? It's like he knew that the synoptic Jesus was going to enact that, but the Johannine Jesus just has the interaction with the disciples on the beach in chapter 21, and then either leaves or disappears. It's very hard to tell because the Johannine Jesus tends to do that. I mean, they're just about to stone him to death, and then he just slips away. He just leaves the temple or gets away from the crowd, and it's very hard to picture that. Well, if you're the focus of attention, this giant crowd around you, how do you get away from a crowd that's about to stone you to death? And that's never answered, but it seems to be an attribute of the Johannine Jesus. But as far as I'm concerned, no, that didn't happen in our lifetime. That happened 2,000 years ago.
I think Steve meant Superman.
What's that?
I think Steve meant Superman in that sentence. That Superman died and was resurrected in our lifetime.
Okay, well, that happened multiple times. It's like there was the one time where it was a really big deal with black plastic bags and everything like that. Okay, he was born in quotation marks. He puts in quotation marks long before we were, but we were witnesses to his resurrection in quotation marks. It had to have been a momentous thing to have been alive when Jesus died. And it's like, yes, I can definitely agree with that. I think the most momentous thing was the resurrection of Lazarus, because that was something that a large crowd did observe. I mean, everybody was there consoling Martha and Mary about the loss of Lazarus. Lazarus had been dead for 4 days and entombed, and the Johannine Jesus resurrected him from the dead. Lazarus, come hither, and Lazarus came out of the tomb. And if you want to talk about momentous, I mean, there you are. You're not from around here. You're Jesus. You're not from Bethany, but you've been to Bethany several times, and you know Lazarus and Martha and Mary, and everybody is consoling them about the loss of their brother, and come to meet Jesus with Mary, like a whole crowd of them. And then they all go to the tomb, and here comes Lazarus out of the tomb. And then, dinner where Lazarus is sitting at dinner, and it's what's really interesting about that part of the story is that we don't find out anything about Lazarus. It's like, what did he say about being dead? What did he say about being resurrected? Or did he say anything? How long did he live after that? I'll be getting to that in one of my Monday reports, way up ahead, because that's as I say, chapter, what is that? Chapter 12, 11, 12. Okay. Getting back to Steve, this got me thinking about a scene from the movie Waking Life. The character mentions that sci-fi author Philip K. Dick wrote that we were living in the year 50 A.D. in the events of the book of Acts. Jesus was crucified just recently, and his return is imminent. I would take issue with that. That he would have been crucified probably in the late 30s A.D. Is that recently in 50 A.D.? I suppose so. We're in 2021. Is 2008 recently? For a lot of people, it would be recent in quotation marks. And his return is imminent. That's another one of those aspects of, certainly at the time of his ministry, at the time of his crucifixion, at the time of his resurrection, that was the impression that was being conveyed, was imminent as we understand it. Like, this is probably going to happen tomorrow or next week or a month from now at the most. And even taking this at face value, that we're all living in 50 A.D., it was still another 20 years before Jerusalem was sacked by the Romans. And the imminent return, as conveyed to people, was definitely, it didn't sound like it was going to take 20 years. It sounded like it was going to happen any minute now. And I always take that as God's timetable. If you're God, 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, it's all pretty much imminent compared to the life of a star or the life of a galaxy. The passage of time over the last 2,000 years is an illusion created by the demiurge to fool us. In reality, we are still living under Roman rule. That's one of those. It's interesting that you would mention that, because Ward Green does the same thing in Rip Kirby, the section where I'm documenting what I see Ward Green is doing and attempting to do and achieving, comes at the end of the section that I'm working on now, and it's the same kind of thing. Progressives, feminists, pagans, all are definitely obsessed with the events of Jesus' life and the sequence, and they're really desperate to get that viewed differently, so that they can revisit it, and we all have to revisit it and go through it again. And it's like, no, you had your chance. Everything happened and unfolded exactly the way it did. There's certainly things that you could have done better for the pagan cause, but you're up against God. It's going to unfold the way God wants it to unfold, and it's going to unfold in such a way that you're going to have an omniscient level of intellect in order to even keep up, let alone be able to revisit the outcome. got me thinking that Superman's death is a reenactment of the Jesus story, a ripple through time that repeats itself, like Alan Moore's idea that the Ripper murders resonate forward and backward through time. Yes, that definitely happened. Superman and Philip K. Dick's work and My Cerebus and all of those things. I mean, we're still living in Christendom. It's definitely taken some body blows in the last 50, 60 years, to say the least. But we're still living in Christendom, so it's almost impossible for people still living in that context to actually create anything that isn't Christian in nature and doesn't have Christian elements in it. You can try to, but that was part of the point, as far as I can see, was the redeeming power of God's Christ redeemed everyone in spite of themselves, because it was that all-encompassing and was specifically designed by God to do that. It's one of the core elements of God's clockwork mechanism, and I assume it enacts itself on every habitable planet, whatever it's habitable by, when the time comes that you have to earn over the course of, in the case of our planet, 4,000 years of doing religious faith wrong and not getting it as right as you could, and then you earn a Jesus, and then dealing with that for 500 years and not screwing that up totally, then you get a Muhammad, and then after that, everything else is just everything else. That's my take on it, and all of those things are going to, yes, definitely resonate forward and backward through time. That's one of the things that I'm documenting in Strange Death of Alex Raymond. Why did Alex Raymond die in this really weird, grisly way? And it's like, well, because he deserved it. To explain that, I have to document pages and pages and pages of forward and backwards in time and how I see the clockwork mechanism working. I also realized that, like Jesus, Superman had Jewish quote, parents, unquote. Joe and Jerry instead of Joseph and Mary. I've never seen that one before, and that's a good one. That's a good one, yes. It definitely seems to me that Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were in one of those God's clockwork mechanism substantial pockets. It's like you have no idea what it is that you're creating here. You just want to create a comic strip that you will be able to do the way Alex Raymond is doing Flash Gordon. That was as high as their perspective went. Imagine being Alex Raymond. Imagine having your own Flash Gordon, and it's like, no, you're actually much closer to the source of all this and to the crux of all this than Flash Gordon or Alex Raymond will ever hope to be. But that hasn't hatched out yet, and you won't really be there when it does. It'll just look like inexplicable events. But you guys are right on the golden spot for all of this. The same as I definitely got a golden spot for Cerebus, but it wasn't the golden spot that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles got. Any thoughts about the Superman story being a reenactment of the New Testament? Again, I don't think that you can avoid that. There's definitely theories out there that there are only a half dozen stories, and every story is just a different permutation of that. I think even those half dozen stories are just permutations of the primary story, of creation and redemption, the promise of redemption and free will as a redemption choice, starting with the Big Bang and then enacting itself from there. And in the same sense that I forget how many giant suns were created after the Big Bang, the first major consolidation. I think there's 5 of them, half dozen of them. Yeah, those are the primary stories that everything is a permutation of. But those 5 suns are all just permutations as well of the Big Bang. God is, and His works are very, 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 very big, unimaginably big, and permutate everything. Even in our own culture, it was only with the advent of movies and popular music and radio and television that we got knocked askew from that. People knew the difference before that. Like, this is religion, this is Christianity, this is God, this is Jesus, this is the Blessed Virgin, this is Christian doctrine. Entertainment is just entertainment. It's at a much, 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 much lower level. And we're in one of those time periods where we decided to confuse ourselves and to believe that popular culture is somewhere on the same chessboard with this. And it's like, you're already, to me, you're already steering yourself in the wrong direction if that's your impression. And then Matt says, Superman is Moshe. Quit trying to make him a Christian, Goyim. But seriously, Superman does have Moshe's backstory to a point. So any modern day edition of Christian symbolism is, I don't know, Steve didn't ask me. I thought that was funny. So, yeah, it's, again, there are primary stories, and the problem with drawing analogies like that is that Moshe was drawn out of the river and was given to Pharaoh's daughter, and then his sister said, I can find a woman to nurse child for you. So he was raised as an Egyptian, but was definitely nursed by his Jewish mother. That really doesn't have an analogy with Superman. It would be like comparing Ma Kent to Pharaoh's daughter, and those two definitely don't hook up in any way that I can see. So
I actually have a book. I found it, I think, at Goodwill years ago, and I bought it thinking it was something completely different. And it's called The Gospel According to Superman. And I'm going, okay, this is wacky. I need to buy this. And I read it, and it's actually it was put out by a religious publisher, and it was at the time, the assertion was that Superman was created to supplant Christ, and here as a pastor is how you can stop people from doing that. And I'm reading it going, these people never read a Superman comic.
Right. Yeah, that's one of those, I remember that it was quite a stir when the Gospel According to Peanut came out, which was in the mid-1960s. And it was one of those, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do here to say, we have to make the church, and we have to make Christ, and we have to make God relevant to a new generation of people who have been reared on pop culture. And it's like, you go too far over in that direction. And, you know, as I've been fond of saying,